Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. Colombia has long been synonymous with the global drug trade, a reputation cemented during the late 20th century by infamous drug lords such as Pablo Escobar, as well as the Cali cartel. These criminal organizations wielded enormous power, infiltrating the political, economic and social fabric of the country. However, their reigns were not everlasting. The fall of Escobar in 1993 and the dismantling of the Cali cartel in the late 90s marked significant victories for Colombian authorities and their international allies. Despite these successes, drug trafficking remains an ongoing challenge in Colombia. The 21st century has seen the rise of new fragmented criminal organizations that have adapted to law enforcement strategies, ensuring the persistence of the narcotics trade. This video explores the decline of Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel, as well as analysing their impact, and examines the modern landscape of drug cartels in Colombia today. Pablo Escobar, the leader of the Medellín cartel, was arguably the most notorious drug lord in history. During the 1980s, he built a vast criminal empire that controlled the global cocaine trade, amassing an estimated fortune of $30 billion at his peak. His influence extended beyond illicit activities. He infiltrated Colombian politics, offered social programs for the poor, and even attempted to run for political office. However, Escobar's reign was also marked by extreme violence. He ordered assassinations of politicians, judges, journalists, and even civilians in an effort to maintain his power. The government responded with an aggressive campaign to dismantle the Medellín cartel. The United States, through the DEA and other agencies, provided intelligence and logistical support to Colombian authorities. Escobar's demise came on the 2nd of December 1993, when he was killed in a shootout with Colombian security forces in Medellín. His death essentially marked the end of the Medellín cartel, but did not signify the end of the drug trade in Colombia. Instead, it just created a power vacuum that was quickly filled by the Cali cartel. Unlike Escobar's Medellín cartel, which thrived on violence and intimidation, the Cali cartel operated with a more corporate-like structure. Led by the Rodriguez-Orjuela brothers, the cartel adopted a business-minded approach, using corruption and bribery rather than overt violence to maintain control. At its height, the Cali cartel controlled nearly 80% of the world's cocaine market, leveraging sophisticated money laundering operations and international networks to distribute their product. Their lower profile allowed them to operate with relative impunity for many years, but the increasing pressure from law enforcement and the US government eventually led to their downfall. By the late 90s, Colombian authorities, again with significant US assistance, captured key leaders of the Cali cartel. Gilberto Rodriguez-Orjuela was arrested in 1995, followed by his brother Miguel in 1996. With the fall of their leadership, the cartel quickly disintegrated, leading to a new era in Colombia's drug trade. While the fall of the Medellín and Cali cartels was a major achievement, it did not end drug trafficking in Colombia. Instead, it led to the fragmentation of drug networks, giving rise to smaller but equally dangerous organizations. The 21st century has seen the emergence of criminal groups known as BACRIM, Bandas Criminales, including Los Urbanos, Los Rastrojos, and Clan del Golfo, among others. Many of the new drug trafficking organizations evolved from demobilized paramilitary groups. After the official disarmament of the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, AUC, in the early 2000s, several former members shifted their focus to drug trafficking. These groups lacked the centralized structure of Escobar's Medellín cartel or the Cali cartel, but maintained extensive networks for drug production and distribution. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, a Marxist guerrilla group, had long financed its insurgency through cocaine production and trafficking. Following the 2016 peace deal between the Colombian government and FARC, many former guerrillas abandoned the drug trade. However, dissident factions who rejected the peace process continued illicit activities, ensuring that drug trafficking remained a lucrative business in Colombia. Unlike in the past, where Colombian cartels controlled the entire drug supply chain, Mexican cartels, such as the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, CJNG, now play a dominant role. These groups collaborate with Colombian producers, taking charge of cocaine distribution to North America and Europe. This shift in power dynamics has resulted in increased violence as various Colombian factions compete for alliances with Mexican cartels. Despite decades of counter-narcotics efforts, Colombia remains the world's largest producer of cocaine. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, reported that coca cultivation reached record levels in the 2010s. The high demand for cocaine in the US and Europe ensures the continuous profitability of the drug trade, making eradication efforts difficult, if not impossible. Colombia continues to face significant challenges in combating drug cartels. Corruption, poverty, and limited state presence in rural areas contribute to the resilience of these criminal organizations. While authorities have succeeded in arresting major drug lords, the decentralized nature of modern drug trafficking groups makes complete eradication nearly impossible. The Colombian government has adopted a multi-pronged approach, combining military action with socio-economic programs aimed at providing alternatives to coca cultivation. However, the effectiveness of these strategies remain uncertain. The peace process with FARC, while a step in the right direction, has not completely ended violence and drug-related crime. Additionally, the legalization and decriminalization of drugs in various countries have influenced the global narcotics trade. Some experts argue that a shift in drug policy focusing on regulation rather than suppression could reduce the profitability of illicit drug networks. The fall of Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel marked the end of an era, but certainly did not eliminate the drug trade in Colombia. The 21st century has witnessed the rise of decentralized criminal networks, neo-paramilitary groups, and international collaborations that continue to sustain the cocaine industry. The Colombian government, with international assistance, remains engaged in a long-term struggle against these organizations. However, as history has shown, the drug trade is deeply embedded in Colombia's socio-economic fabric, making its complete eradication an ongoing challenge. Future policies must of course balance enforcement with economic development, seeking a sustainable solution to one of the country's most persistent issues. Despite still being key players in the narco landscape, Colombian gangs and cartels don't have the same reputation as other organizations from Latin American countries, such as Mexico, Brazil, and even Ecuador, when it comes to brutal content, such as filmed executions. Most murder videos tied to Colombian cartels are usually taken from third parties, such as CCTV or bystanders, and primarily, these videos show quick assassinations, usually via the means of shooting. However, there are some super nasty videos out there tied to the Colombian criminal underworld, and today we will explore a couple of said clips. But nevertheless, what happens in the actual videos? The first video in question is allegedly tied to an organization named Clan del Golfo, arguably Colombia's most powerful drug cartel. In fact, this video is apparently tied to various cartels from multiple different countries, and piecing together the story is somewhat hard. But who are Clan del Golfo? Clan del Golfo, also known as the Gulf Clan, or Autodefensas Gaitanistas de Colombia, AGC, is the largest and most powerful criminal organization in Colombia, emerging from the remnants of right-wing paramilitary groups, particularly the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, AUC, after their demobilization in the mid-2000s. Initially led by Daniel Rendon Herrera, alias Don Mario, the group expanded rapidly through drug trafficking, extortion, illegal mining, and territorial control, establishing itself as a dominant force in Colombia's underworld. One of its most notorious leaders, Dairo Antonio Usuga, alias Otoniel, was captured in 2021 and later extradited to the United States in 2022, but despite his arrest, the group remains operational, adapting to government crackdowns and shifting leadership structures. The Clan del Golfo has significant influence in key drug-producing regions, particularly in the Uraba region, and along Colombia's Pacific and Caribbean coasts, where they control crucial drug smuggling routes to Central America, Mexico, and even the United States. They are known for their violent tactics, including targeted assassinations, armed strikes, paros armados, and clashes with security forces and rival criminal groups, often using intimidation to maintain control over local communities. The group has also forged alliances with international drug cartels, such as Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, further solidifying its role in the global cocaine trade. Despite ongoing military operations that has targeted their leadership and infrastructure, the Clan del Golfo continues to pose a major security threat in Colombia, demonstrating resilience through its deep-rooted criminal networks and ability to recruit new members, including former paramilitaries, guerrillas, and corrupt law enforcement officers. But anyway, the clip in question surrounds the murder of 68-year-old Venezuelan drug trafficker Reynaldo Fuentes, also known as El Taliban. The murder took place during the summer of 2023, and essentially, a coalition of drug trafficking groups were involved. Reynaldo, who resided in the Dominican Republic, was essentially a middleman for a Venezuelan trafficking group called Clan del Cartel. Reynaldo, also known as El Taliban, due to his dealings with associates in the Middle East, stole a 200-kilo shipment of cocaine from his bosses in an audacious scheme. While in charge of the shipment of cocaine, which apparently was due to be delivered to Mexico's Gulf cartel, he set up a scheme where he told his employers that he lost the shipment of cocaine due to a pursuit with the Coast Guard. He actually dumped the cocaine at sea before informing his bosses of what happened, and initially it seemed that they believed him. Seemingly in the clear, El Taliban then went back out to sea to retrieve the cocaine packages that he dumped, and he then transported them to a remote Caribbean island, and he also kept the cash entrusted to him by his bosses. However, it seems that members of his own network then told the bosses of El Taliban's scheme, which would ultimately result in his downfall. According to reports as well as rumours, multiple cartels across Latin America wanted El Taliban dead, including his Venezuelan employers Clan del Cartel, the Mexican Gulf cartel who missed out on these shipments, as well as the Colombian group Clan del Golfo. After committing the heist, El Taliban then was allegedly called for a meeting by his cartel bosses, and he left his home in the Dominican Republic on the 14th of July 2023, only to be never seen again. The meeting was for the 17th of July, and upon arriving at said meeting, El Taliban was captured by cartel henchmen. El Taliban had been lured to his death by the bosses that he had betrayed. Reynaldo Fuentes was then taken out to sea to be dispatched of. The video in question is 47 seconds in length, and the clip was seemingly released to social media by the perpetrators, presumably as a warning to those who dare try to pull a similar stunt. As you play the video, you are met with shaky camera footage taken by a person on a small boat at sea. In the boat lies El Taliban, who seemingly has had his hands and feet tied up, and he also has a wound on his head, presumably suffered during his capture. It's hard to ascertain how many people are on the actual boat. I think there are 4, including El Taliban. You see 2 men scurrying around on the boat before they both grab El Taliban. One of the men calmly states, "Make sure not to get our faces on video." Once they grab El Taliban, they struggle to lift him as he has a heavy object, possibly an anchor, tied to him. They eventually lift him up, so he is essentially resting on the side of the boat, before one of the men quips, "Make sure he has no way to save himself." After a couple of seconds, El Taliban is then pushed overboard, and the weight tied to him follows, dragging him deep under the ocean. Once El Taliban is overboard, the person filming just looks in the area where El Taliban was dropped, and you see air bubbles reach the surface. You also see the faint outline of El Taliban sinking deeper into the ocean. Now, in explaining this, I'm probably not doing justice to how disturbing the clip is. Obviously, it isn't as visceral or as graphic as 95% of the videos I've covered on here, but this clip is just incredibly unnerving. I imagine what was going through El Taliban's head as he was being sailed out to sea, knowing what his fate would be. I imagine the anticipation, the dread, and the fear. I imagine what was going through his mind as he just hit the water and was submerged by the sea, and I wonder how long it actually took for him to pass. The notion that drowning is a painless or peaceful way to die is false. In reality, drowning is a distressing and painful process. It involves a struggle for breath, panic, a burning sensation in the lungs, and an overwhelming feeling of suffocation as water enters the airway. The body's natural reflex to gasp can lead to aspiration, causing intense discomfort and oxygen deprivation, leading to unconsciousness before death. Again, this clip isn't graphic in the sense of it being visceral, but it is intense and psychologically disturbing, more so than many videos I have seen previously. Survivors of drowning often describe it as terrifying and agonizing, dispelling the myth of a peaceful experience. The next clip revolves around a case of mob justice, supposedly carried out by a drug gang, though I can't work out what gang the perpetrators belonged to. The case of mob justice was the result of the murder of a 10-year-old girl named Helen Joanna Ramirez Roja. The case took place in late September of 2024. It all started on the night of Friday the 27th of September, where relatives of Helen reported her missing to authorities and stated that she was kidnapped by a man who took her from her home in the township of Centro Alegre in the municipality of Acchi. Authorities, who together with the community, immediately began the search. The girl had been with her mother making empanadas for a party, then they went to sleep around midnight. At around 3:30 in the morning, the father woke up because some sheep had left the corral. The mother accompanied him, but it was at this moment when the subject entered the house and took the girl, who was asleep. Sadly, shortly after, the mayor of the municipality, Daima Guzman, told the local media. The body of Helen Ramirez Rojas was found near a cemetery in the rural area of Acchi around noon on the 28th of September. Apparently, her body was covered in bruises, cuts, and also showed signs of severe abuse. At the same time, residents of the area had already identified the perpetrator, an unnamed 26-year-old who had been previously stalking the young girl and was said to have been completely obsessed with her. It's also alleged that he was inappropriate towards other minors. Apparently, residents of the area gave the perpetrator's name to a local armed group, and they got to him before the authorities could. A day after young Helen's body was found, the man accused of having kidnapped and murdered the minor was found dead, who would apparently also have signs of torture on his body, and his hands and feet were tied. As of right now, it seems that those responsible for the man's murder have not been arrested. Shortly after the perpetrator's body was found, a grisly video made the rounds, showcasing his demise. The clip in question is exactly 59 seconds in length. As you play the video, you are met with the sight of the alleged perpetrator, and he has been stripped down to his boxers, and he has been hogtied. The clip is shot in a rural location during daylight hours. As you play the video, you are immediately met with a sight of torture. As the man is hogtied, you see one of his captors take a needle, and he drives the needle under his toenail, and this causes crying and screeching from the captive. The person doing the torturing deliberately pushes the needle slowly to make sure the man feels every second. Once he drives the needle under the toenail, he then moves on to commit more torture. He takes yet another sewing needle, and this time he pushes it under one of the captive's fingernails, again going very slowly as he does this. This causes even louder screams, and the captive begins to cry, and he begs for his torturer to stop. He then takes 2 more needles. He seemingly drives one into the captive's hands, and he takes the second needle and again lodges it slowly under one of his fingernails. The crying becomes even more high-pitched and intense. At this point, the torturer then rolls the captive over so that he is lying on his back, and this causes him to utterly freak out. He shrieks and cries again, begging his torturers to stop. It's really hard to see, but the victim's chest is beet red, and it seems as if he has had several pins stuck into his chest prior to recording. The torturer then totally strips the victim, seemingly giving the impression that he was about to castrate him, which again causes the captive to plead and freak out. At this point, the screams have gotten so loud and hysterical that it actually seems to have pissed off the torturers, and as a result, a person off camera takes a pistol and shoots the victim. He misses the first shot, but the second shot hits the captive in the face, causing his face to basically cave in on itself and indent. He is then shot one more time. The gun used is a revolver, possibly firing 357 rounds. His face is completely destroyed after the 2 shots, and you hear the air leaving his lifeless body. After the event, and after the body of the 26-year-old killer was found, authorities seemingly confirmed that an armed group was responsible, and they also more or less clarified that the person murdered was responsible for the killing of young Helena Joana Ramirez Roja. Usually with mob justice cases, the backstory behind them is very murky, and the accusations levied at those killed are usually very hard to prove and research, though this seems a cut and dry case. The person murdered in the video was all but confirmed as a child killer by Colombian press and authorities. I myself, and I'm sure most watching this video, will not have any sympathy for him. But anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it, if you can enjoy this sort of content. If you're new here, if you could hit like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, would be much appreciated. Also, links to my Twitter and my Twitch are in the pinned comment, so for those interested, please check those out. But as always guys, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.